All right, buckle up for a deep dive. And this one's going to be a little, well, different. We're diving into Poopoo Peepee.
Yeah, you heard that right. Poopoo Peepee.
Poopoo Peepee.
We're going to be analyzing an analysis of Poopoo Peepee.
So there's a document out there.
Yep.
Just filled with Poopoo Peepee. Nothing else. Someone on YouTube analyzed that document, then someone else analyzed that analysis.
And that's where we come in.
It sounds ridiculous, I know.
It kind of is.
But that's part of why it's so interesting. I mean, what happens when we try to pull meaning from something that on the surface seems totally meaningless?
Exactly. It's like if you hold up a blank canvas and you ask someone, what do you see?
Ooh, I like that.
The answers you get can be pretty revealing, about the person, about how we think.
Okay, so walk us through these layers. We've got the original Poopoo Peepee document. Easy enough.
Then we have our first YouTuber who went ahead and tried to figure out if there was some kind of hidden message or code within those words.
Then we have the second YouTuber whose analysis we're really focusing on today. And they look at that first analysis and basically asked, okay, what does this tell us about how we humans make meaning out of things?
Meta-analysis.
Oh, yeah. Big of
like
that.
meta-analysis to the next level. But seeing it all laid out like this, these different layers, it kind of helps us get at the core question here.
Which is?
How do we as humans even find meaning, even when on the surface there might not be any there to find?
So first things first, can we even decipher Poopoo Peepee? Is there a secret message hiding in there?
Well, the first YouTuber, they tried. They looked at things like, could this be a lost language, some kind of secret code? But, for a language to work, to actually communicate different ideas, it needs complexity, it needs grammar, it needs variation. Poopoo Peepee, as interesting as it might be, just doesn't have that.
Right, right. And if we're talking about a code, some kind of cipher, we'd need a key, right? Some context. Otherwise, anything we come up with is just, well, it's made up.
We'd be inventing meaning, not finding it.
And that's where this deep dive gets really juicy.
Because both of these YouTubers, they eventually shifted their focus. It wasn't about deciphering the words themselves anymore. They started looking at the power of repetition.
Repetition. Okay, you mean like how those jingles, those annoying advertising jingles get stuck in your head even if you hate the product?
Exactly. Think about mantras, lullabies, even like those chants you hear at a sports game. They all use repetition, but not always to convey information.
It's more about a feeling.
Yeah, to create a feeling, an emotional response, a sense of unity,
It's true. I mean, think about how a song can bring back such vivid memories or make you feel so strongly, even if the lyrics themselves are super simple.
And that got those YouTubers thinking, could Poopoo Peepee, through its sheer repetition, be a form of art?
Art? Wait, are we saying a document with just Poopoo Peepee on it could be hanging in a museum?
Well, maybe not in the traditional sense. But they started thinking about Poopoo Peepee as sound-based art. Think of an earworm. You can't get it out of your head. It's an auditory experience.
Even if that experience is just annoyance.
Even then, because even that annoyance is interesting. Think about it. It could be our brains kind of rebelling against the meaninglessness. Our minds, they're wired to find patterns, to make order out of chaos.
So when we hit Poopoo Peepee, something so nonsensical.
It's like our brain is trying to force it to make sense, to fit it into some pattern we recognize.
So our struggle to understand Poopoo Peepee could be art itself. That's trippy.
It is a pretty fascinating thought, isn't it? And the YouTubers, they didn't stop there. They also thought about Poopoo Peepee as provocative art, similar to art movements like Dadaism.
Dadaism. Right, wasn't that the art movement that was all about being absurd and nonsensical? Like that famous artwork Fountain, which is basically just a urinal?
Exactly. Dadaism was a reaction to World War I, the horrors of it. Artists felt traditional art just didn't make sense anymore in a world that had become so senseless and violent, so they embraced the absurd.
To shake things up.
Yeah, to challenge the status quo, to provoke a reaction, make people think differently.
So could Poopoo Peepee be doing something similar? Is it intentionally absurd? To make us squirm a bit, make us question what we think art even is.
It's a question worth asking, and it leads us to a really important point here. Even if Poopoo Peepee itself doesn't have inherent meaning, the act of analyzing it, that has value. It's a mental exercise.
Like a puzzle.
Yeah, a puzzle with no solution maybe, but it's the process of thinking about it, of exploring it, of challenging our own assumptions that matters.
So it's less about finding the right answer to the whole Poopoo Peepee mystery and more about the mental workout we get from wrestling with it.
Exactly. And that mental workout, it helps us build critical thinking skills, which, let's face it, are pretty essential in today's world. Information overload everywhere you look.
We got to be able to sift through it all.
You got to be discerning. You can't take everything at face value. You got to ask questions, think for yourself. And in a way, Poopoo Peepee is like training for that.
Poopoo Peepee, mental training. Who knew?
One of the YouTubers even called it a mental palate cleanser. I love that analogy.
A mental palate cleanser. Yeah, I like that. It's like hitting the reset button on your thinking.
Exactly. But this all leads to a bigger question. Why are we so driven to find meaning in the first place, even in something like Poopoo Peepee? Why do we care?
Well, I mean, our brains are wired to look for patterns. That's how we survived, right?
Yeah.
Way back when. The people who were good at spotting patterns were the ones who found food, avoided danger.
And live to pass on those genes. So we're all descendants of champion pattern seekers.
But then we come across something like Poopoo Peepee, which just throws all that pattern seeking out the window. Makes no sense.
And it creates discomfort, like our brain doesn't like it. But that discomfort, it can be useful. It forces us to rethink our assumptions, to think in new ways, to be open to the unexpected.
So Poopoo Peepee is a reminder that it's okay to be uncomfortable, to not have all the answers, to embrace the absurd.
Absolutely. And that's a pretty powerful lesson, isn't it? One we can apply to so many parts of our lives. Feels like we've gone down this rabbit hole right into the core of what even is meaning. We started with Poopoo Peepee, something that seems on its face totally meaningless.
And yet here we are, like digging through layers of analysis. It's wild.
And for me, what's so interesting is it really shows how much of what we call meaning is actually just stuff we project onto things. Like, we're constantly trying to find order, make sense of the world, even when it's not really there.
Right. Like our brains just can't help it.
It's like that thing if you give someone a random string of numbers, they'll try to find patterns in it. Our brains are wired for it.
So are you saying there's no such thing as real meaning? Like it's all just made up in our heads?
Ooh, that's a question philosophers have been debating forever. But what's cool here with the Poopoo Peepee thing is that even if meaning is subjective, even if we're making it up, it's still powerful.
Right. Like the stories we tell ourselves, the way we interpret things, that shapes how we see the world, what we believe,
Right.
even how we act.
Totally. So even Poopoo Peepee, which might not have any inherent meaning, the meaning we're getting from it right now just by talking about it, that does something.
It's shaping how we think about meaning itself. Very meta.
Super meta.
Okay.
But it highlights this important point. We're not just passively absorbing information. We're active in creating meaning. We're building our understanding of the world all the time.
Which brings us back to that critical thinking thing, right? We got to be aware of our own biases, our own tendency to just project meaning onto stuff.
And be open to different perspectives. Just because we find something meaningful doesn't mean everyone will, or that we've got the right interpretation.
No one's got a monopoly on the truth.
Exactly. And that's why conversations like this are so valuable. Sharing our thoughts, asking questions, even disagreeing, helps us see things in new ways, appreciate how complex meaning-making really is.
Okay, so we've done a lot of theory here, but how do we actually get better at this whole meaning-making awareness thing? Are there things we can do practically?
One big one is mindfulness. Like really paying attention to your thoughts and feelings as they come up, noticing how you react to different situations.
Instead of just instantly reacting.
Yep. Take a pause. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? What am I assuming here? What's a story I'm telling myself about this?
Be a detective of your own mind.
Love it. Another thing that's super helpful, seek out different viewpoints intentionally. Read stuff from people with different backgrounds, different opinions than yours.
Talk to people you disagree with.
Yes. Even if it's uncomfortable, those conversations are where the real learning happens, where your assumptions get challenged, you see the world in new ways.
It's so easy to get stuck in your bubble with people who already agree with you. But that doesn't really push you to grow, does it?
It's those moments of friction when different ideas clash that we really start to change and evolve.
It's pretty wild how I started with Poopoo Peepee, this super simple, kind of silly thing.
And look where we've ended up.
Talking about the nature of meaning itself, critical thinking, perspective.
It just shows you sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead to the coolest discoveries.
Speaking of journeys, I'm curious where this one goes next. In the last part of our deep dive, we're going to explore how these insights can actually help us out in the real world.
We'll talk about how embracing absurdity can make us more creative, more resilient, better at handling whatever life throws at us. Stick with us. There's a lot more to uncover.
We've really gone deep on Poopoo Peepee, haven't we? I mean, we've looked at it as maybe a language, a code, even art.
Yeah, and we've talked about how it reflects how our brains just like crave meaning, even in the most random stuff.
And the crazy thing is, this Poopoo Peepee thing, it might actually give us some tools to handle this crazy world we live in.
You know, I think you're right.
Okay, I'm all ears. How's Poopoo Peepee going to help me with my daily life?
Think about it. Every day it's just bam, information overload, news, opinions, data, social media. It's exhausting.
It really is.
Yeah.
Makes you feel like you got to have an opinion on everything right now.
Exactly. But Poopoo Peepee, it kind of gives us permission to say, whoa, hold on, I don't get this, or I need a minute to process.
You know, that's a good point. We're so used to having to react instantly to everything.
But sometimes it's okay to just sit with not knowing.
Just be comfortable with the mystery.
Exactly. In a world where everyone's going to analyze everything right away, have the hottest take, Poopoo Peepee is like a breath of fresh air. It says, pause, think. You don't need to control the narrative.
It's like a mental detox.
I love that. A mental detox. Just step back and observe. See what's really there.
And that can be so helpful, whether it's a tough problem at work, a conversation that's getting heated, or just trying to understand what's going on in the world.
You can.
So by embracing the absurdity of Poopoo Peepee,
We're practicing being more flexible, more resilient when things are uncertain.
uncertainty is just part of the game.
It is. It encourages us to be okay with not knowing everything, to be open to the unexpected, and to see challenges as, well, maybe they're not roadblocks. Maybe they're opportunities to grow.
This whole deep dive has really changed how I think about things, Never thought I'd learn so much from something called Poopoo Peepee.
It's amazing, right? Sometimes the best lessons come from the places you'd least expect.
So if there's one thing you want our listeners to take away from all this, what would it be?
Embrace the absurd. Don't take yourself too seriously. And, find the joy in exploring, in discovering new things.
And remember, it's okay to not have all the answers. In fact, that's where the real fun begins.
That's where it starts. Sometimes the most meaningful moments, they come when we're not sure what's going to happen next, when we let ourselves be surprised.
Well said. So to everyone listening, we challenge you. Take that spirit of curiosity, that playfulness out into the world. Embrace the absurdity, question everything, and don't forget to laugh along the way.
You never know, you might find your own Poopoo Peepee out there. Something that seems totally meaningless at first, but then, bam, it sparks a new idea, a new way of looking at things. That's the magic.
That's the magic. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride. Keep those minds open, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.